Warning: this podcast episode discusses sensitive topics, including mental health, abuse, and suicide. The content may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling, please consider seeking support from a mental health professional or contacting a crisis helpline in your area. Listener discretion is advised. Hey guys, welcome to the Heart to Mic podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Chorono. Here we celebrate the power of authentic conversations, and together we'll explore our emotions, challenges, and growth through powerful storytelling. We are still in conversation about the things that affect us, the things that make us who we are. I have been in a space where I have experienced some sort of toxic relationships, and I believe that majority of us have our fair share of the same. And because of that, I have had the need or just the innate urge to have conversations regarding narcissistic relationships, because we also throw around the word narcissist and narcissism left, right, and center without necessarily knowing what that entirely entails. And because of that, even my therapist, Africa Gender Wellness, she said, she's in agreement. She's in agreement.
Really, you want to put me on this?
I do. So because of that, we're going to dissect narcissistic relationships, figure out how to identify them, but also the healing process of that and how to overcome that, and also build your self-esteem in a way that attracts healthier versions of people as opposed to the ones that take advantage of you. With that, I will allow my guest to introduce herself.
I'm Rubie.
Once again.
I'm back again.
Back again. Like we never left.
I hope this time you're not going to put me on the spot again. Huh?
No. I just need your input. I need your knowledge.
So we can talk about it generally.
Yes.
Because narcissism.
Yes. I what is narcissism? Let's start there.
I'm trying to figure out ways of how to explain it without being over clinical, but it's like, I would say it is a person who tends to be have a lot of self-involvement. They tend to have characteristics of, they would like admiration. They tend to have manipulative behaviors. They tend to be controlling. And this starts to show in their relationship with themselves and with other people. So I'm sure you've heard words like grandiosity. Grandiosity is when you feel you have a sense of narcissistic behavior is more of self-importance. Like
it's all about you.
It's all about you. Self-centeredness, right? Being conceited. Yeah.
And what are the traits or rather the things that could potentially show you that you're in a narcissistic relationship? I have one. Maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
There's the love bombing.
Oh, for sure. Love bombing, because there's the love bombing. There's also, you could even develop a trauma bond where there's this cycle of the narcissist. Oh, I forgot to also add before I answer that. Okay. Narcissists tend to be very charismatic, tend to be very charming. So one end of the stick is you have the charming, you have this educated
spontaneity.
Yeah. And very charismatic. So the love bombing comes with the charisma. You start to feel comfortable. They start to buy you gifts. They're already talking to you. And then 1 minute the shift starts to happen, like, oh, what are you wearing? That thing looks fat. Yeah, why did you wear that? And narcissists also tend to gaslight. And there are different forms of gaslighting, but we'll talk about that another day. So gaslighting is where you start to question your sanity. You see, narcissists tend to also have very dominant personalities. And they tend to make you feel that their reality should be your reality and you like having it.
Like almost imposed.
Almost imposed. And I always tell people that our tradition and our culture has really created the environment to produce a lot of narcissistic traits. Yeah.
It's almost like it's encouraged.
I don't think
unconsciously though.
Unconsciously they do encourage it, because like if you take, for example, we were talking in our previous time I came, we were talking about father wounds, mother wounds. Narcissists also tend to be emotionally unavailable, right? You can see how a son can be raised. I'll just use a son as an example, but they're also they're also narcissistic women out there, and I acknowledge that. But I think it's an easy example to use as son because of what in the previous episode we were talking about mothers and how mothers tend to build an emotional relationship with their sons. And in that sense, the mother does everything for the son. The son can never do wrong. You don't realize you're actually nurturing this self-centered, conceited child that is entitled to, and then becomes an adult and expects the same thing. And if they don't, they manipulate you and they'll try and control you to give them what they want.
Okay, so some people are not able to differentiate between confidence and narcissism because it sort of portrays itself in a similar way. Because my experience with narcissists has been they come off as they know what they want, they know how to get it, they feel almost safe, right? Because they come with such certainty in themselves, or rather portrayed so. But how are you able to differentiate between someone who's confident and someone who's a narcissist?
Right. So, we have also inflated self-esteem where you can overly exaggerate the things that you're doing, right? And I think obviously when somebody appears confident, it is attractive.
It is.
But, when you're confident, you understand the positive traits you have, you understand you have a balance in how you evaluate your sense of self. You understand your qualities and your strength that boosts your confidence, yes, and your abilities. And also at the same time, you also understand, here are my weakness and this is how I can ask people to assist. But with the narcissist, they'll tend to exaggerate it and you'll find some gaps like, I worked 10 hours to get 10 cars. Like there's always an exaggeration.
Extremes.
Yeah. In the way they
do things.
So they'll say, I am very, very smart, but they are unable to also take criticism or unable to get feedback or unable to have a constructive conversation with a person in which he can also learn. So you see, confidence doesn't mean that you know everything.
I see.
It means that you also have the ability to understand when you don't know and when you know.
And to be able to receive the feedback.
And to be able to receive the feedback and put a boundary and communicate if you found the feedback was negative or have dialogue or being able to understand that I know that this is not who I am. Yeah.
So there's a potential of being confident whilst also being on the wrong. You can still maintain a level of confidence whilst acknowledging your faults, your weaknesses, and probably the contribution you have to whatever situation there is. But with narcissists, they're always right.
Yeah, they tend to be always right. Remember, there's narcissistic trait, then we have narcissistic personality disorder.
Are those different?
Yeah, because to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, you must meet certain criteria. But then you can also present with narcissistic traits like being emotionally manipulated. And narcissism is also found on the dark triad, but there are also other personality disorders on the dark triad. But if we use it in the context, and I always like to, as I said, bring it in the context in which we're practicing, you can find like with narcissism, when you're talking about the love bombing, right? Narcissists tend to be drawn to people who they can easily dominate. They even take certain dominance as a form of a challenge, right? And narcissists tend to isolate people. So gradually they'll start to subtly plant ideas in your mind. Like they can repeat things over and over again. Like, why are you wearing that? I told you it doesn't look good. And then when they start to see like you're becoming self-conscious, they'll continue. But some are even unaware, right? Others, as somebody told me, it's about wielding the power. Because some people have seen another person in power and saw how that crushed a person who was not as stronger than the other. So they said, I'm going to wield the power. So at times narcissists can come through love bombing by meeting certain of your emotional needs in the beginning. All right, you have your dad never bought you flowers. I'll buy you flowers. Your mom never told you you're beautiful. I'll tell you you're beautiful. Your school teacher didn't say you'd make it. I'll tell you you'd make it. And then slowly I withhold that from you. And then
Almost like you need to work for it now.
yes, and then they withdraw, and then you try to pursue, right? And then you start to escalate, right? And then he said, "You see, this is why I don't tell you information because of how you behave."
It's like some sort of punishment.
It's like a relationship with punishment. It's like a punishment system okay, look at it in 3 elements. And this is something that I started to learn. The punishment system, relationship with control, reward system, right? So I reward you with gifting you. Then I control you by trying to tell you who you are, by molding your identity. And then I punish you if you do not uphold what I want or if I'm bored. And then I beat you down. And then when I realize I've beat you down and you're crying, then I come back and I apologize and reward
With
you.
gifts.
Yeah.
So then the cycle continues.
Yeah. So if you look at it in those 3 elements, it becomes more clear.
Which is why it's so hard to break out of it.
Because of the impact. Because when you leave a narcissistic relationship, your self-esteem has been beaten down. You've also lost attributes of your social support. Maybe even you've lost attributes of your confidence. You've lost
Your community.
your community. You've lost even your family. You've also lost finances. You've also sometimes lost years, right?
But obviously before it gets bad, it's like rosy and sunshine, because that's when the love bombing is.
That's why I always tell people, understand your personality vampires, because if you understand your personality vampires...
For those who don't know, what is a personality?
So a personality vampire is basically an energy, a character that tends to want to dominate you, or tends to want to be in conflict with you, or tends to want to drain you. Just not your cup.
Or like a vampire, like a literal vampire.
Like a literal vampire. You see when people watch
Vampire Diaries.
these vampire diaries and stuff, and you see the vampire comes and sucks your blood.
And that's it, yeah.
And does it. Because probably your blood tastes good. Yeah. And also it's narcissists tend to, because they're self-centered, they tend to be interested in selfless people. Or people who even tend to have a weak sense, an unhealthy sense of self-esteem.
And are they automatically able to like detect that?
Some do.
And then some they figure it out on the job.
Some they... Well, so when we talk about narcissistic traits, they are not, because they've probably seen it happening
in their family.
Yeah, in their family.
So it's not something that they can depict as a negative trait.
And then a narcissist tends to struggle, or let's say people with narcissistic traits tend to struggle with taking accountability.
It's always they're the ones who are right.
Of course, because why did you wear that white top?
When I asked you not to.
When I asked you not to, now you make me look bad. Now you see I hit you because you made me do
upset.
This. Yeah.
They're almost like they retract the responsibility back to you.
Yes, and then I crush it because if I have no response, if I don't have the responsibility of taking accountability, then did I do anything?
So it goes from the reason why I beat you is because you wore the top. Then you as the victim find responsibility in the action that they portrayed.
Because why did you wear the top?
Because it goes back to wearing the top.
Yeah.
Not the action of being punished because of wearing a top of my choice.
You deserve the punishment.
Because of wearing...
Because you disobeyed.
Oh.
The punishment fits the crimes in their eyes.
But also... because it feels so good in the beginning, because I think most of us only stay in the cycle because we are hopeful of the person they were when we met them.
Of course, it's the potential that we're chasing, but also it's also they've molded you to feel that you can't live without them. Because they continuously tell you that.
It's a constant reiteration.
And maybe at the same time, they're also gifting you so you're looking at the gift. You've heard this statement where some people say, I'd rather I'd rather cry in a Ferrari than cry in a matatu.
Cry in a Range Rover.
Yeah, to cry in a
It's
Range Rover. Oh yeah, Ferrari hasn't reached Kenya.
We don't have Ferraris. It's the Ranges.
Yeah. And the fact that also, I think even the easiest targets are vulnerable people who come from, who are struggling, like women from socioeconomic backgrounds, even men. And a narcissist could be giving you everything, you give them what they want, and then now he's adapted you to a lifestyle. So coming out of it is very hard because you're going to go back to crying in a matatu.
So the fear is we are going back to where we were, and the only way we can stay in this space is through this person.
And then because they've also given you a taste of emotional vulnerability and meeting your attributes of your emotional needs through support. So when people are trying to help you see that this is unhealthy, they're like, but you do not know him the way I know him, or you do not know her the way I know her. And I think also you'd find a lot of narcissists in positions of power, even sorry to say, but even in the influencer industry, it's called the entertainment industry, there are so many narcissists, right? You seek attention comes from your followers, right? You put a persona, it's working well, you can wield control. Yeah.
So unconsciously
you can develop narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But okay, so I think another topic that I think many people lean towards is like, oh, that was a red flag I didn't see. That was a red flag in him. That was a red flag. But how are we able to depict these red flags? And what would be the red flags that would be like attached to a narcissistic personality?
First of all, they tend to isolate you by
But also you don't know
character assassinating the people around you.
Making you question those around you,
right? Then at the same time they make you feel like you need them, right? That you are incapable of making it through, and then they without them because they tend to weaponize the information you have given them about yourself. Right.
Which is why, like, once you get into a relationship and there's the need to open up, at least there's the pursuit of you needing to open up because the other person is constantly asking you about yourself, and you think that we're in a process of getting to know each other and this is cute, and like we're getting to know each other, we're cute and whatever.
They make you feel like they understand
they understand you, they hear you,
yeah.
But the information that they're collecting is to use against you. But how do we know though? Like, how do you know that this one is gaslighting me or this one is love bombing me? How can you know?
First of all, you need to understand the negative cycle. So if we talk about gaslighting, if you start to question your sanity.
Like, I actually didn't do this.
Yes.
And I'm being told I did it.
Yes.
And now there's the fact that I'm accommodating a reality that did not actually happen.
Exactly. He can, like, I've noticed that there's something that people don't even notice. We have so many personality disorders that have tendencies of manipulating, controlling, gaslighting. But there's something I've started to pick up, which is called the jealous delusion. A narcissist can also see you, and you can say hi to a friend, and they can start saying, what's going on with you with this person? Oh, I saw you looking at this person strangely.
Why are you so close to them?
And people don't realize that narcissists are insecure.
Because it does come from a point of insecurity.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a lack of.
And when narcissists feel like they're losing control, they'll try. That's why people are like, yeah, he came back, gave me flowers because he was losing control over you. Or she.
Can be a she, by the way. It's not only men that are toxic.
They're also female narcissists.
That's true.
Yeah.
We're not gender biased.
Yes. Yeah. So you'll see that's why when somebody leaves a narcissistic relationship and then they're like, oh, my ex is with someone else. Of course, they had other people lined up. If you meet their needs, it benefits them. And also at the same time, what is it that you are benefiting from being in this relationship with? Because we can point fingers, but I always ask people, what was it that you were benefiting?
Self-esteem, affirmations, probably monetary things like the flowers or the dates and the constant gifts. And maybe because there was a lack of in previous relationships and you find yourself carrying or depicting or giving more weight to the things that you did not receive because you're seeing it as the availability of based on the lack of in the previous relationship. I think I'm saying these things also based on my own experience. There's also you, because you've been maybe in a role or a pattern of men who did not want to spend on you, and then now you find someone who's spending on you, and that is your focal point. Because it's feeding off something that you lacked in a previous relationship, and because you do not see through all the other things that could potentially be factors that are upholding a romantic and a healthy romantic relationship at that, then whatever you're looking for is just monetary exchange. I wasn't getting flowers in the previous relationship. I'm getting flowers in this one. So does that automatically relates to this is a healthier relationship because I'm receiving flowers in this one. I wasn't communicated to regularly. This is a relationship where I'm being communicated to regularly. But then I realized that when it comes to relationship, it's way more than, and I term these things as bare minimum. You texting me every day is bare minimum. You gifting me is bare minimum. You loving me is bare minimum. You being respectful is bare minimum. Now I'm realizing that. Before I was in a space where if you give me a gift because of the lack of getting gifts as a child, then you are top tier. You giving me flowers because I never received flowers growing up, you are put in a pedestal. But then there's other factors that contribute to a healthier relationship other than the things I receive.
I think people
from
need
you.
to understand what it is to be in a healthy
Relationship.
with themselves, and then also evaluate the relationships, their friendships around them, so they can also see normality. Because we were talking about fathers and mothers, you know, they taught us these things, they exposed us to these things. Even your teachers could have been narcissistic.
And you just don't know.
And you don't know.
You really don't know.
Yeah.
The effect of narcissistic or narcissism is a low self-esteem, and you find yourself in a space where you doubt your worth,
For sure.
doubt your being, doubt the value that you bring.
You can also get depressed.
Absolutely. It's a
You can
trigger
also
of,
get traumatized.
yeah. And I think based on, again, my experience, it is, I found myself in a space where I used to stutter. I used to stammer. I've never been someone who stutters or like swallows their words or is not confident in whatever they're saying, whether it is factual or not. If I believe in something, I'm going to say it. And I realized that after getting out of a relationship where my reality was skewed and I was made to see things in a very different way from what I believe is true and what I believe is the reality, the fact that I had almost had to meet myself again for the first time, had to build my reality again, had to build my self-esteem. It started from the lack of being that, because I was questioned about my confidence, I questioned my own confidence, and it broke it down to a place where I couldn't think or see myself as a confident person. Hence the stammering and stuttering and swallowing of words. And it took so long. I think it's only now that the world is getting to see me in who I am. This is not even my prime. I've just gotten back to the level, to surface level. I'm not drowning. I'm not floating. I'm standing fully in the surface of, in the water. And it's taken close to 3 years for me to build myself back to believing, number one, that I'm confident without the validation of anyone or anything, and to also be comfortable with, yes, I am aware of my shortcomings, but regardless of my shortcomings, this doesn't make me less than or verbal enough to receive any abuse. But it took so long,
Of course,
so
yeah.
self-esteem is affected in that process, and you find that because of the comfort that comes with knowing or being in a space where you do not view yourself highly, then you attract the same person. Then the cycle
continues. But then also at the same time, remember, we are also in a society where we are being told who we should be. So you think a narcissist, it's not easy to find their way to you. or a narcissist wouldn't be created by that environment. And you see, the thing is that already you might have experienced narcissistic abuse as a child, maybe from a narcissistic mother or a narcissistic father or a narcissistic grandparent or uncle, sibling, they're there. So when you meet a narcissist in the romantic manner,
it feels familiar.
It feels familiar, the charisma, because already they make you feel seen. And then your tolerance is a bit higher to deal with that behavior because it's normal subconsciously.
Why is it that we feel shame though once we leave? Or guilt?
Because it's also shocking to realize that you were once in a situation where you couldn't defend yourself. And maybe there were people around you that were trying to make you understand that this is something unhealthy and that you a lot of time was taken away from you. Yeah. That's one. Those are a couple of contributing factors, but there are others.
But also because, like you said, narcissists attract selfless people. So regardless of whether or not they're the ones on the wrong, you will find some sort of fault. Yeah. Because you give of yourself.
And you see a narcissist, you see shame you feel like you're fundamentally a bad person, and a person who's continuously making you question your sanity, making you self-doubt yourself, always giving you negative criticism. Most definitely you'll start to feel like a bad person because you're questioning, why is this person always upset with me? Why aren't I doing
something right?
Yeah. And then the expectations are so high and you never meet it. And then when they have outbursts, men and women, they tend to say that you're the problem. So when you're continuously fed this narrative, you start to feel like, I'm a bad person.
It's true. It almost becomes a reality, which now dives or builds the emotional dependency, because now they become the source of your confidence, approval. Because for months or however long you're in this space, you depend on them for approval. You also depend on them for a source of confidence. So when there's a lack of that, you do everything you possibly can to get that back. Does that contribute to the cycle?
It does contribute to the cycle. So remember, you can look at it from withdrawer and pursuer. Right? The narcissist is pursuing you, and then all of a sudden withdraws. And they start off with emotional neglect, verbal abuse, right? They start to tell you...
Silent treatment.
They start to tell you, you could see that the chair is green.
But it's red, Chomi.
Yeah.
It's red.
It's red.
And you're even questioning,
and then,
am I colorblind? Is it actually red and I'm not seeing?
Then a narcissist will convince you that they are more intelligent than you. And maybe they would give you an example. Maybe there's an experience where they helped you out and they're like, you see, I told you I got your back.
In that time.
Yeah.
And actually did.
Yeah.
God. So there's cycles, because I think we often find ourselves in the same cycle because it feels familiar.
And you can also end up developing narcissistic traits, because now you're going to defend yourself when you come out, and then you start being unkind to someone and torment them because you are tormented.
Hard people.
Like bullying.
Oh, I can tell you that. I have a story. Episode 1, season 1 of the Hard to Make podcast. I can tell you that. But when it's actually time to leave, why is it so difficult?
That's a good question. Why don't you answer that? Why was it difficult?
Because it's familiar.
Exactly.
It feels safe. And the fear of the unknown, which is known in this regard, because you're able at that point to set a comparison. And before you actually do get in a narcissistic relationship, I feel like there is evidence or an experience of healthy relationships. Then you do get into this one, and towards the tail end of it is when you're like, maybe this is not healthy. But because of the familiarity and however long, even if it's 2 months, you've been in this toxic relationship, regardless, it feels safe. Similar situation when we are dating and you hear people say, I'm always dating my father because it feels familiar. If you're put in a position like myself where you are constantly trying to chase a relationship with your father and trying to build a relationship with your father, not because they wanted to, but because you wanted to, then you get into a cycle where you are almost conformed and comfortable with being the pursuer. So you pursue and pursue because it feels familiar. Now, when it comes to toxicity, unfortunately, it gets to a space where the toxicity becomes your norm. And stepping out of that to accommodate a reality that is healthy becomes scary than this situation that is even worse than the outside. Is that true? Welcome to Hard to Make Podcasts. Here we celebrate,
I think also because, even before we met, you had done work on yourself.
I had, but I can't tell you, Rubie, that it was easy. And I don't even think it's still easy to... You can spot someone who's amazing, they have great intentions, surface level. And then you have conversations with them that can potentially... People sell themselves also. I realize people tell on themselves. If you're aware and if you're just in tune and you're listening keenly, then you'll see spaces in which they thrive in regards to like dominance and pride. But still, I don't know, the fear of also loneliness plays a part because yes, you will leave this person and then you be by yourself. And if you are fearful of being by yourself, then that is not a reality you're willing to accommodate.
And then, a lot of people are also serial monogamists. They tend to have a long love history. So instead of taking time from the relationship to reflect and understand, they jump into another relationship to get over the other. So
They usually say the only way to get over someone is by getting under another.
But how has that helped people?
No, I can tell you, doesn't help at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just causes more pain and
A lot
increases.
more pain.
And then you start to feel you're unlovable, you're unworthy.
It definitely changes how you view yourself.
And like every time I work with people, they're always calling maybe a parent a narcissist. So even when you're entering inside a romantic relationship, it's like you've been raised
by a narcissist.
Yeah.
So it sort of feels familiar.
So that's why when people meet healthier people, they're like, you're too nice. You're a simp. Fine, then go and find the unsimp or whatever.
And the unsimps, the nonchalant. We are so chalant on this
emotionally
podcast.
Unavailable.
Yeah.
But it's a bit sad that a healthy man is called a simp. But maybe I don't understand what a simp means.
I feel like any depiction of emotional availability is simping, but also because there has been a pattern where men are not allowed to exist as emotional beings.
Yeah,
your job is to provide and protect. Where does emotion come in? Nowhere. You make the money, you protect the home. But because that has not been nurtured, then it makes it very difficult for someone to be like, I love you, I care about you, I want to pick you up from work, and I'm okay with these emotional actions being seen because it doesn't necessarily change the fact that I'm a boss at the office. But not many are nurtured in that space. It's also for like you deliver or you give a man flowers and they don't want to be seen with the flowers because automatically that relates to some level of femininity and weakness.
And that's what men are teaching each other in terms of masculinity. And like everybody is so sad. So
truly,
the same people that are discouraging you to be emotionally available to your partner, deep down, they are, I'm sure, men have moments where they see comfort in female friends and tell them how they feel. But that's because they also desire emotional safety.
They do. They're human beings, and I believe that we need to now create a society where men are allowed to feel.
I agree.
And that's just feeling. The fact that even us as women, we are feeling and constantly we're in our feelings and we are talking about, oh, this is not good for my mental health or my emotional health or whatever. why is it so difficult for us to accommodate the same for men? But also because of the lack of that information, conversation, and pursuit of that reality, then men are almost geared and encouraged to becoming toxic men, which is why, yes, you were raised by a man who was unavailable as a father, but regardless of the fact that there's information for you to be better than your father, it is almost difficult to do so in a community and an environment where it encourages you to be like your father. Which is why I think it's very difficult for us to change the cycle right now, because it requires so much more effort. And also because there's a lot of stigma around men, even just crying. Like a man crying automatically. Even for me, I'm trying to undo that because I've been made to believe that men shedding tears is just you. And now I'm realizing that I genuinely do value men who are in touch with their feelings. If you're telling me the last time you cried was 20 years ago because you hit your toe at the corner of the table as a kid, and since then you've never, or that's when you lost your grandfather and you're close to your grandfather, you've never cried since, it scares me because I'm a person who's in touch with their emotions, and I think I would want us to be in touch with our emotions. But also when it comes to narcissists, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I also don't know, and I can't speak for everyone. But it's very hard for me to accept a reality where people intentionally hurt each other.
That's true.
I feel like that is, how are you sleeping at night? You know, if it's genuinely it's intention, because we do make mistakes as human beings. You do something and potentially hurt someone else. But if that is actually who you are, there has to be something that has geared you to thinking that that's the norm.
Yeah, it depends on like what is seen as good and what is seen as wrong.
Yeah.
Taboo is very different in other places. But I think like hearing you say that it's so unfortunate that men were not given that space.
Yeah.
To have that emotional experience that I'm really hurting. I'm grieving the loss of my grandfather that I was close to. Or like my toe hurt and it really stung. Like we all have emotional atlas. What is seen as masculine and what is seen as feminine needs to be redefined. Emotions are emotions.
And do you think that the birth of narcissists and the birth of toxic men and women has come from not only the encouragement of the same and the fact that many people are replicating the same behavior, but also the fact that any form of awareness or emotional availability has been attached to weakness, number one. And number two, it's that automatically, if this is how your dad was doing things, then creating a different normality thereafter is shunned upon, because
especially if many people in the society are not
have done the same thing.
Yeah. So if you are, in fact, we like to say that some people's mental health is a symptom of what's happening in the household.
Exactly. It's a product of your environment.
But it's unfortunate. That's why some families decide to leave when they realize that the environment in which they're raising their kid is unconducive because of the society. And you see that they move into different communities, different counties or cities, right? Or even countries, because they're like, I'm not going to raise my kid
the same way I was raised,
or even around
the same
other
people
kids who
were
or other
raised.
parents who see it as normal and they pack their bags, find another job, and they move with their child.
But that doesn't help when it comes to like effects. Like, how will that necessarily build change? And I think that is what I'm adamant about. It's okay, fine. You were raised in a toxic environment. Your dad used to beat your mom, probably beat you as well. And in as much as that is your reality, that is where you've come from, you've now grown up in an environment where you're privy to healthier relationships. And I think that's when, when I was in high school, is when I saw, so two parents can be together, like they still love each other. It's possible for people to have long-lasting marriages. And I am actually on the other side. It's the normal like environment and reality is not mine. The other side exists as well. But because you are in a space where toxicity, abuse, manipulation is normal, then it skews your reality of the same. And now I've realized that the level of effort, Ruby, for me to undo.
That's what I was just about to say. Like, do you, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to work on themselves and see like the reality.
And even to accept those, because you might be healing, you might be working on it, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the fact that every other person is working on it as well.
And that's one of the issues I've seen a lot of my members have when I meet them in the aftercare program. Their community is changing, or they don't fit into their community because they've changed.
So for those who have identified, I was in a toxic relationship and now I've gotten out of it, thankfully. But now I am at the ground where I was when I was starting over. How do we start over? For me, I knew that the first way for me to deal was therapy.
Yeah.
I isolated myself through therapy, number one. Number two, I found a way to release endorphins or just some level of exercise and body movement. But also at the same time, I removed anything that would potentially change or alter my perception of things, i.e. alcohol or any drug substances. And I was able to see things and meet myself for what they were. Regardless, and honestly, I won't take that away from the fact that it is very difficult, and that process is, I think, one of the most difficult things that I've ever gone through in my life. But the only way I was able to steer that journey was also because of I was looking at the contrast. If I don't do this, then I'll end up in the exact same space. So picture someone who has identified, or someone who has identified and probably hasn't left, but is in the pursuit of living, and probably someone who has just left and they're trying to build themselves from ground up. What would be your advice for them?
I think we'll start off with the first one, who's planning, who's in it and is aware and wants to leave. That they're doing something courageous. They're choosing themselves first. Their mental well-being comes first. But also reach out to emotional people who are your emotional support system. If you're entangled or there's a lot of enmeshment, start putting your affairs in order, right? Gradually, so they can start to lose the power. Also get the help of mental health professionals. I think with both of them, mental health professionals. You see, the thing is the narcissistic abuse was there, but what did you lose?
Yourself.
And you can rebuild it again. That's one thing, but it will take time. So it's a journey. I'd tell them both people in both situations that number one, it is a journey. Number two, you should congratulate yourself for wanting to walk away from the situation and trying to rebuild yourself. Number three, get yourself into a healthy environment or be around people who can emotionally support you and I say stress and have the capacity, because some people don't have the emotional bandwidth and to help you, but others do, and don't be so offended about it. At least they're affirming their emotional boundaries with you. And then be regular with your therapist. And also, if you realize that your mental health had deteriorated and your mood is not uplifting, there's nothing wrong with taking medication to help you and adding on a team. And then also there's also support groups, right?
Are there support groups at Africa Defender Wellness?
Very soon, next year.
Coming soon.
At this point in time, not yet, but very sure. For sure, we will create that for people. And that will help you also meet other women or other men who've gone through it.
The exact same thing.
Yeah, so you don't feel like you're so alone.
Yeah. But to stay encouraged as well, to knowing that regardless of this situation that you're in, that you could potentially get out of it, and you are deserving of a different reality. I think more often than not, because they screw our identity and how we see ourselves, then we think that we are unworthy of a different reality. So to constantly fill yourself with the fact that you are worthy of these things, regardless of whether it may come now or come later, you're still worthy. The worthiness doesn't deteriorate, And hopefully, I think as we grow, even as an industry, as we grow as a space, that people are able to lean into therapy regardless of what society may still think about it, because I think we still have a skewed, relationship or definition of therapy, or attachment therapy to weakness, or attachment therapy to not being emotionally aware, or like emotionally strong. Why do you need this? Why do you need that? But no man is an island.
I agree. And also, I want you guys to also know that there's still more research being done on narcissism and personality on the dark triad, obviously. And also there are other subtypes. So that's something that their therapist can teach them. And also for them to realize that they deserve better. And that I also apologize that they went through something so difficult like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you can always rebuild.
Always.
Yeah. So
Can
I hope
always start.
you realize that your sense of self-worth can find itself back to you. And also when you build this new version of yourself, at least now you become more aware, you have more confidence. And you'll also forgive your old self, because probably you were not aware.
You're not aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think with information comes responsibility, but if you don't have the information, then you wouldn't hold yourself accountable or responsible for the actions that you're allowed to happen in your life. Guys, I think, like I said, in this season, we're healing. Not only through our own stories, but also through professional advice, Africa Gender Wellness. And honestly, I do hope that we birth a different, healthier, more aware generation going forward. I think we're already in a good trajectory, but obviously with information, a lot of self-work, awareness and accountability, not only of self, but also as a community, would help us in building a healthier space for us and for our kids to exist. So this has been a very challenging season for me as well.
I think what you're doing is really great. And I think also as mental health professionals, we also need to contribute. And I see others are doing it.
Yeah.
I think we also now need to start asking you guys to tell your story.
Yeah. Hence the Hat to Mic. Yeah. It's for us to tell our stories.
Yeah.
Generally what we feel in our hearts and the things that we yearn for in the future, for not only for ourselves, but also because we're trying to be better versions for our own kids, for our partners, for our friends, for our family members, our siblings, our parents. Because we just don't want to do things the way they were done before.
No, I think being born in that environment, I don't think anyone would want to raise their child. But if you don't want to raise your child in that environment, it starts off with you.
It does.
And as much as we talk about the environment when it comes to narcissistic traits, narcissism, there's also genetics. Like there's so many
parts to play.
Yeah, and we've just spoken a small bit. The whole topic is very large.
It's a bit broad.
Yeah, so you can do more research, but then, I've also realized that in this day and age, narcissists call other people narcissists.
Projecting.
But I think with the personality disorders, it's quite interesting. Yeah. And especially with the dark triad, most of them share clusters of symptoms. I think that's something that I think as mental health professionals we need to also, because everyone is worried about narcissism. Have you guys met dark empaths?
What are dark empaths?
That's a story for another day.
Okay, Google, guys. Even me, I'm going to Google right now. But yeah, I'm always very grateful for your presence, your time, your effort.
Yeah.
You're also in a career that is generally, the driving force of your career is helping people. And people like you need to be acknowledged, recognized, and appreciated. And I appreciate you for the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so if you haven't started therapy and you're considering therapy, do check out Africa Gender Wellness.
Yes.
And we will have all the details in the description box below for not only your access, but also your perusal, but also your curiosity. You can just ask questions and see whether it's something that you're willing to do, but also realize that healing is not only for the fact that you want different results for the environment, but more so for your peace of mind and for the growth of self, right? Yeah.
I completely agree. And please shop around also.
For other therapists.
Yeah. And as I said, we just briefly spoke about
this
topic, but there's so much more information out there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. This is a sort of like triggering but helpful conversation. Yeah. Where can we find you, Miss Girl?
Well, you can find us on Instagram at Jipende Wellness. And you can also, our new website is coming out soon, so that's exciting. But we're at www.africajipendewellness.com, and our number is 0745 60 19 92.
Lovely. This was nice. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I hope this was helpful, impactful, and it's scratched like a level of, being inquisitive regardless of whether or not you're in a narcissistic relationship or someone is, and that it will create the need to not only help, but also to find a way to heal and have a better generation going forward. These conversations are definitely not easy, but they're needed, and the more we have them, the healthier generation we create. So I hope this was helpful. Do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on all our platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and podcast platforms to get all the information, episodes, audios, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.